So much to look forward to in today's show and so much to cram in. We kick things off with some race reviews where Catalyst was the real talking point of yesterday. As we went down to the central districts, you had Hirangawi, who was too tough, beating home more Nikita. We head across the Tasman. We had a real upset in the Mackay-Diva Stakes. That's Gatting beating home Mystic Journey. And we uncovered a new queen in Sydney. That's Arcadia Queen, the Western Australian star. That's the first half of our show. The second half, we've got Bernard Saundry in the studio to talk all things industry issues. Hello and a very warm welcome to Weigh In. As we highlighted in that opener, there is so much to get through today. We've got race reviews, we've got guests on the show, and at this point I'll introduce in my co-host Michael Guerin. Welcome in this morning.
Good morning, Emily. Big hi to everybody. Thanks for joining us on a Sunday. I know you've got plenty of other things you could do on Sunday morning. Well, we do have a serious component to the show today, of course. As you mentioned, Bernard Saundry is going to be joining us, and there's a lot of issues and questions we don't know the answers to in the industry. But one of the other questions we don't know the answer to is just how good is Catalyst? I know it's only early spring form and it may not have been the strongest race of the year, but it was the most dynamic performance we've seen domestically from a young horse this season. And we had races in Melbourne and Sydney either side of him, where I doubt the 3-year-olds we saw were much more impressive. So it'll be interesting to ask our other guest what he makes of the new sensation of New Zealand galloping.
You hinted our other guest, and at this point I can introduce in Sean Ritchie. Sean, welcome to the show. It's great to have you on this morning.
Thank you very much, Emily. It'll be exciting to be here. It'll be interesting to see what Mick has for Bernard, and it's always been a very good show to be part of. I appreciate being offered the chance to be here.
Let's hit it between the eyes. Catalyst yesterday, as a rival trainer, do you think to yourself, wow, this is the real deal, or do you say, let's just pull back a little bit and wait till we get to Hawke's Bay or to Riccarton?
He looks the real deal. He really does. I haven't seen a turn of foot on any other 3-year-old this year quite like that, given we've had wet tracks up to this point. But his performance at Hawke's Bay was excellent, and he improved again, in my opinion, at Ruakaka there yesterday. No doubt we'll see some footage of it, but the fact that he could accelerate as quick as he did was super impressive.
We talk about good horses overcoming any situation to be able to win, and that is exactly what Catalyst did. Let's have a look at Ruakaka yesterday.
Ready, gates open, they're off. Bellamente, no early speed. Now first away was Exuberant to lead out from Elliott Power. Right there, Aotea Lad. And settling in a beautiful spot fourth in the early doors now is the favourite Catalyst. They're about to swing into the lane now on the pacemaker. Exuberant from Elliott Power. Aotea Lad over on the inside. Out wider now is Zelensky. Catalyst held up and behind them. Needs space, is looking for it. Further back in the field then we've got In Fashion at the 250. Exuberant the one in front. And now Catalyst has got out into the clear. He's been set alight and is coming out after them quickly. Whoa, look at him go. Catalyst. Boy, has he got some gears. That's as easy as you like.
Gee, what have we got here? Seriously, that is incredible. Wow, Clayton Chipperfield, that is a serious horse. We saw it at Hawke's Bay. He's backed it up again here today.
Yeah, it was good to see him do that, prove that he has got the ability that we all thought he had, you know, and that Hawke's Bay was no fluke, but getting a bit worried, a couple of hundred out, couldn't get out.
Yeah, for sure. Then Troy did the right thing, just got across heels and then balanced him up, and gee, I just love the stretch on him. He's got a beautiful stride on him, hasn't he?
Oh yes, he just drops and just glides over, and the turn of foot is just phenomenal, yeah.
For you to be able to get your hands on a horse like this, I mean, it must be so exciting for you.
Oh, sure is, you know, I've only really just started taking this game seriously, and to do this in my first year to have a horse like this is a dream start.
Yeah. Okay, what's the path now? Is it Hawke's Bay Guineas, 2,000 Guineas? Is that the thinking from here now?
That's the plan from here, you know. We've got 3 weeks to the Hawke's Bay Guineas and then a month to the 2,000. So whether he has a trial or just a jump out or even just an exhibition gallop somewhere, you know, in between the 2 Guineas races. But yeah, that's the plan.
Gee, that looks like a lot of fun riding this bloke.
It makes your job easy when you like him.
Yeah, were you getting a bit worried? I mean, you're in a tricky little spot and you had to come across heels, but once you balanced him up, he leaped down.
Yeah, I ended up in a good spot, but just straightening up, Trudy was outside me, sort of going nowhere. So I had to make the choice whether to pull back or sort of kick up, but got out and it was all over. Could have sort of booted along and try and put a bit more speed into it, but just want to teach him a little bit and get him in behind a few. Then we've got options going into the other races later on.
Too right. Well, he showed that today, didn't he, with his explosive turn of foot. When you set him alight, gee, he put them away quickly.
Yeah, he's pretty special. Possibly the best horse I've ridden.
Exciting is an understatement. Electric, dynamic, professional. They're all words we can put with Catalyst. If he'd have run fourth, you would have said, what a great run, what an exciting horse going forward. But to have won, he's the real deal.
Yeah, and there's real speed there. Obviously, you can't train speed into them. They're quick or they're not. And you need a horse to come into your 3-year-old crop to excite everybody. And as we see the race here, it worked out beautifully at the start. He posied up nicely, Troy, as a few went forward. And then things got a bit tricky as we get further into the race, because there was a horse 3 wide outside him, Zelensky, who actually went super, and Medi was sort of stuck in a pocket. So as we see them here, Exuberant's got a pretty easy lead, which was the place to be all day. And Sean, as I come to you, it did race very much up and in. So the fact Exuberant was leading so easily and then Troy got pocketed, that could have proved disastrous for the $1.50 punters.
Exactly. Look, Trudy put Troy in a pocket, which he was entitled to do, but he didn't panic Troy. He waited. He knew he had the horse underneath him, and he eased back and went around her. And hasn't he got a beautiful action? He gets his legs up so high.
And flips the toe, yeah.
I haven't seen an action quite like that since perhaps a horse like Excellent, which was a long time ago.
Round about here, he's in trouble, and Troy has to make the decision to come to the outside, because the gap on the inside he was waiting for didn't come. And here you're thinking, is he going to catch him? Because the pattern of the day was that he wasn't going to, and well, that's the moment you want, Emily, with those good horses. And when we come into the spring, we saw a great performance from Melody Bell, but we expected her to do something special because she's the horse of the year. This is the new blood coming through, and a lot of
the gift that keeps giving, isn't he?
It is, and with the 2-year-olds from last season, most of them aren't here anymore. Your Deal raced at Flemington yesterday, Probabil's in Sydney, so we needed new blood to come into this crop. And this new blood has turned up, and he's going to be staying here. I spoke to Rick Williams from the Oak Stud yesterday. They've had offers up to 1.3, 1.4 million, but they're not interested. And he said Dick Curran is not interested in selling this horse unless something silly happens. So at the moment, when the texts come through, they say no. They say, and then Sean, they're going to go Hastings and 2,000 guineas. Then the interesting situation is they see him as a miler. There's not many miles here over summer because he's not eligible for the Karaka Classic. So if he's your horse, what would you do after Riccarton?
I want to put a good note into Clayton Chipperfield too. He's done a superb job with the horse. I've worked with Rick Williams with Group 1 horses in the past, with Devise and Artistic and Zarella, and he's very easy to talk to, and he knows very well how to get to these races well. And Clayton's done a lot of breaking in. He's a very good horseman, and he's got a very nice horse on his hands, and between them they'll come up with the right formula for sure. But you're quite right, it'd be lovely to see him in Sydney in the autumn if he's as dominant as he was there in the 2,000 guineas.
What about a $7.5 million Golden Eagle at 4?
Well, that's what they're talking about as regards to the immediate plan, is go to Riccarton, back off him, because if they think he's a miler, there's not much in the way of miles here. There's a couple of $100,000 races, but there's nothing major. So Rick was saying we'd love to ease off him and look at Sydney so Dick can go see the horse. He was at a wedding yesterday, didn't even listen to the race live.
Oh no.
And get to see the horse in Sydney in the autumn. About the money on offer for the horse, he said, look, okay, we're getting offered good money, but the way stakes are going in Australia, as you mentioned, the Golden Eagle at 4, they think if he holds together and fulfills his promise, he could win $1 million, $2 million. So the good news is, for those who are taking the shorts, around $2 in the 2,000 guineas, first day of the carnival at Riccarton, he's going to be there if he holds together, and they are thinking they're going to keep him here in this country, which is really good for us.
Before we look at that 2,000 guineas market, there was another talking point on the program, and of course it was around Holy Mongol Emperor. It didn't go his way, but let's have a little look at the eventual winner, which was Sherwood Forest, and it was a surprise. First of all, thoughts on the winner?
The winner was very good, by far Step Rockin', and it has a high cruising speed. Indications to Brendan Popperwolf from the stable before from Dean Williams, they would go forward, and that was the way the day played. So a beautiful ride by Troy, who now has a couple of very serious 3-year-olds on his hands, and he's riding Double Impact and Carly at Hastings next Saturday. So Troy's got a really strong book. Now his weight is down. Sean, I'll come to you. We're looking at the 2 leaders. They're just cantering along, so it was on speed. There'll be punters watching this, and they're watching Holy Mongol Emperor, and they're watching Matt Cameron get that far back, and they're thinking, what's happening here? Where's my $1.35? What's happening to my horse? But it's not quite that easy, is it? Because Matt was pushing up early. The horse just didn't want to go with him early.
That's it. I think the key was they've usually ridden this horse cold, and he's got to the outside, had plenty of space, and wound up good. Look, you have to say, at his position here he was in a position to win the race, but he did a little bit of damage to himself early by pulling, and it certainly racing in between horses didn't seem to suit him. But look, you know, he's a tricky one, whether you forgive him or whether you say, geez, he's been a maiden a while now, but his performance at Hastings before this was superb, which is why he was odds on today. You know, so I'm prepared to give him one more run if he's ridden cold and on a bigger, roomier track.
Let's find out the thoughts of jockey Matt Cameron as he was the rider of Holy Mongol Emperor.
Yeah, I still think it was good. Obviously, he was a short favourite, and so he deserved to be. I think probably it's the first time he's been in amongst them, drawn two. He wasn't right out the back, you know, doing his own thing. What he has his last couple of starts where he's got to the outside, and it's all been easy and no traffic. I think it's a big learning curve for the horse as well, and you know he's been put in that situation. He had to man up slightly, and he's still got going late. But you know the inside horses always have the advantage, and he just probably got going a bit too late. So it was still a top run.
Yeah, that's right. Learning, that's the key, isn't it, with him? He's a raw horse who's got all the ability in the world. He's just not too sure how to use it yet.
Yeah, definitely not. You know, if you see him walking around, he's a big boy, and he's pretty cruisy about it. He's probably just a bit too cruisy at sometimes, you know, where he's just done his own thing. But today he kind of had to grow up and be a bit of a man and try hold a spot, which he couldn't really do. And he's got on the bit for the first time in between a race. And I think today he'll probably grow up and be a better horse for it. And don't get me wrong, he's a top horse.
So Matt, probably forgiving the run of Holy Mongol Emperor there if you take that out of what he said in the interview. Updated New Zealand 2,000 guineas market, and we've seen a really good push for Catalyst, and that actually happened even straight after Holy Mongol Emperor, didn't it?
Yeah, so once he went out from 5s to 8s, so Catalyst came into 350, which then became 2s. I'm willing to forgive Holy Mongol Emperor too, and I think, well, Hastings may not be ideal. I think Riccarton will suit him beautifully, but here's the question. If one horse, and Troy taught Catalyst something new yesterday as well, if one horse can settle, can jump, race on the speed,
more professional.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and the other horse can't, Sean, then one horse has an enormous advantage at this stage.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I do think Holy Mongolian Emperor will now improve with the big track at Riccarton, but you have to be a little disappointed that he didn't find the line. You know, Murray and Andrew will be sitting there questioning his last 200 metres because he wasn't taking ground off Sherwood Forest, and he's another horse. He's a lovely big horse. He'd probably suit Riccarton as well, but Catalyst's turn of foot, it's hard to bet into that market yet, isn't it? $2 is very short this way out, and you couldn't possibly back anything to beat him the way he's racing.
No, and the ride now on Sherwood Forest will come up for grabs. Obviously, Troy will be sticking with Catalyst, so somebody should get a nice ride there. Still a lot of chapters to play out there. I wouldn't get too carried away with that market just yet, but it is nice to have a pin-up horse, and it's good for Hawke's Bay to have a horse who they can also run alongside the Livermore, because, you know, we have a great fillies race. The Gold Trail is going to be a superb field on the last day. So that last day of Hawke's Bay is looking like the day we need, because it's also a big day in Sydney. We don't want to be overshadowed too much by Sydney, and it's going to be a cracking day for Butch and the team down there in the Bay.
It's going to be a lot to look forward to, of course, as Michael said, across all age ranges. Let's have a look at some other races on the programme from Ruakaka. We can start with the third. That's Lucy in Rio. This was the Open 1200, and a nice effort outside, put on speed and a good ride.
Yeah, we needed to be yesterday, and Hanger was the favourite and the danger, and he actually was a lot handier than we probably thought he would be, but very few horses outside Catalyst, and Kahara, who was there in the Cup, made any ground wide in the track, and these horses on the outside are going as fast as they can go. But the leader does a really good job. Well done to Kylie Little. They'll head to the red badge on the last day at Hastings again, adding strength to that day. Hanger, very good there, Sean, I thought.
Yeah, he was. Look, you made a notable point there that the inside, with the rail out 2.5 metres at the last meeting, have created a spot down there that's going to be a little bit quicker, probably a length quicker in the straight, and that's probably the margin Lucy and Rio won by. Both Hanger and Mongolian Holy Emperor, for that matter, got into the wrong part of the track as well. So you know, it was harder to make ground out there. So Hanger's performance was good, despite the fact that he got in a position to perhaps be challenging on the corner.
Was that fast lane too small? Because they went from being out to 2.5 metres of fresh ground, and not many horses can fit into 2.5 metres. And I thought for the entire day it was very disadvantageous for anybody who wasn't in that 2.5 metres.
Yeah, this has been a contentious issue in racing for some time. They used to do it at Hawke's Bay, didn't they? They'd move the rail quite frequently, and it would create fast lanes, and a lot of tracks have Tirapa, for example. The wider out you get when it's wet, you obviously get to a better, and there's almost a hump just before the outside, which can be a fast lane. I remember let a rip winning there one day and just got on a fast lane and beat a far superior horse and on the inside who escapes from exuberant or something. So, this is always going to be a little bit of a contentious issue, the rail movement for big days.
Let's move it along and have a look at Kahara, who was a really tough old performance, wasn't it?
Well, it got in here with 56.5, and then Jasmine Fawcett, who's riding really well, got another kilo off, and she's having a wonderful last 10 days as Jazz. Pushes to the outside here, and he is a horse who, in a more tempo-related race, was able to get to the outside, but good on him. He's a wonderful old horse, and sure, you've had a couple of these in your bar, these old rock stars who just keep turning up week in, week out, and he's beaten a decent enough field here. I would suggest he'll probably get another trip to Riccarton at some stage this year.
Well, you've got to love these horses, don't you? I mean, in 10 years' time, if someone says Kahara, no one will remember who he was, but he's won 13 races. He's been terrific flagship for Kenny Ray and his family and Crystal, and he just keeps winning. He just keeps turning up. He's won a Banksman Insular Cup, and he's never going to be in lights. He's never going to be a superstar, but what a wonderful horse to own.
Tell us about your 3 horses you had on the programme yesterday. What's the wash-up with them?
Oh, I was hoping you wouldn't ask that anyway. Tumbleweed was our class. She drew wide and was caught 3 wide, and that was, even if she'd have drawn 1, she was possibly going to be in a bit of trouble in that race, but we had to have a roll at the stumps. I thought it was happy enough with Excalibur. He got back and run on a little bit in the open race, which we'll no doubt get to shortly. But Bellamento, unfortunately, had a heart fibrillation, and I stayed with her last night in Whangarei. Heart fibrillation is pretty much what it sounds like. The heart's beating. Actually, the horse was in no distress at all. She was quite comfortable, but it hadn't corrected itself before the float left. So she's still in Whangarei now. I checked her this morning and it had corrected itself, so I float will pick her up this afternoon. But a lot of horses have come out of a heart fibrillation and won at their next start, notably Jimmy Shue on his Derby preparation.
The Good Fight went to Sydney, was very good, fresh up over there. There's a lot of money over there. Is it a horse who might even stay there for longer than you intended?
He'll certainly campaign there this prep. His first run was terrific. I mean, he raced for $125,000 in a rating 78 mile and a quarter race. So the money's so good. Alternatively here, he could have run in a rating 82 or an open handicap there yesterday for $30,000. So it's a no-brainer really, isn't it? The money in Sydney is staggering.
We do have to press on. We've got so much to cram into our show today. We take it down to the central districts now, and what a day it was. There was students all over the place on course. A fantastic initiative by the club to get these people on course, Michael.
Look, it's wonderful they do it, and it's wonderful when you have a university not far from your racetrack, so it does help. But some people will complain and go, oh, why aren't they there every week? And we need to engage with young people every week. You're not going to get these people to go to the races every week. They've got other things to do. They want to watch footy or play on their phones or play Fortnite, whatever it's called, whatever it's called. So, look, it's great they can do it once in a while, but you can't go to the well too often. But it's fantastic to see so many university-aged people there. Will they be back there next week? No, they won't. But if some of them eventually get into punting or become racehorse owners, that's a good thing. So I thought a really well done promotion yesterday, and they set up responsible alcohol areas in case anybody got a bit tiddly, which university students want to do. So I thought it was really well done, and well done to the club for getting involved at what's not a feature meeting for them.
It looked a whole lot of fun. Let's get into the race review, and we kick things off with Hirangawi in the metric mile. And this was a clash of the titans, wasn't it? And Hirangawi just comes out on top.
And so many of these horses, including Hirangawi, have been to the well so many times over the winter. Like, I spoke to Isaac Lupton. So Joanne Moss trains the horse, but she wasn't there yesterday because she was, this is such a New Zealand story, milking the cows back at the farm, and she listened to it on the radio. But Isaac and her train it together, obviously they're partners. So Isaac, who last week rode the Great Northern Hurdles winner, his 150th jumping success in New Zealand, trains his horse, and they were going to spell him after the Winter Cup because they think he's their next year Winter Cup winner. So here he is trapped wide, which isn't a particularly big deal on a wet track, but they are going a pretty good clip here. There's a couple of free going horses up in front, and there's Mauna Kea, beautifully ridden by the Pope, just sitting in behind them. So they were going to spell, then they brought it north last week and ran second in a very serious race to back in Flash. So these are real war horses. Here's a horse having his 9th or 10th start for this campaign. Mauna Kea has also had a busy winter. So, Sean, whether this form transfers onto good tracks, I doubt. Nikita was pretty good at Hawke's Bay last time, but this horse has been wide the entire way on a decent old clip. Des has been down to Riccarton too. These are horses who just want to be racehorses.
Yeah, they are. Look, they're lovely horses to have around, aren't they? And they've been, they've been exciting to watch over the winter. But you would think with the spring stars starting to step out, they'll need a little bit better turn of foot. And but their trainers are probably well aware of that, and that's why they're running in these style of races and taking full advantage of it.
So I had a good talk to Isaac about here in Galway, Emily, and he is suggesting that, yeah, obviously it's their Winter Cup horse for next year. So like a lot of horses we're going to see out of Awapuni, they'll probably start to taper off a little bit now.
Yeah.
And we could see this being a horse who comes back, and you would say they have so many options at that mile to probably 2,000 metre range the way he won that. But what about a great week for Isaac and for Joanne? Winning the Great Northern Hurdles and then semi-training the winner there of the $75,000 metric mile.
And full credit to them as well. The horse is an absolutely stunning type. He's beautiful, got a lovely dark, almost black coat. Let's have a look at Deerfield, who came back from the Group 1 Tarzino Trophy and made it a win.
Yeah, and good change of tactics here because Miss Lizzie was expected to lead, and last time these two clashed, Miss Lizzie led and got tactical advantage. That's her outside the leader. This time on Deerfield they punched up and said, look, hold on, we want to be the bully this time. And he bullied and basically had them off the bit a long way from home. So yeah, they rolled the dice again on the firmer track at Hastings and came out of a very strong race. But I thought did a good job here. Again, you're saying to yourself, once these tracks firm up, if they ever firm up on that side of the North Island, what's going to happen? But really good performance from Deerfield. As I said, tactically at the start, they were very cunning. What about the next 82 for the day?
I know.
This was outstanding. Yeah. You lead into it because I've got a great story about this horse afterwards.
All right, that's I've got to follow that up, haven't I? Hi, I'm Nikita is the one that we're talking about, and it was a 3-wide, slow pace, worked hard, but got the win.
She did, and I spoke to Gary McCabe, who trains the horse. What a great story this is. He went to the sale. So here's the horse out wide for Holly Andrew, who obviously gets on well with the horse, and it just keeps on rolling. And maybe these aren't superstars, but she's only having a 14th odd start. He went to the Karaka sales on select sales day, the last day where you can get a bargain. Did no research on the horse, no vetting, didn't look at it, saw it come through the ring and thought, oh, I like that, I might buy that, pays $5,000 for it. That's why he's remarkable. And then he rings the guy who bred the horse, called Chris Carr, and says to him this year, well, this mare's going pretty good. What have you done with its mum? And he said, oh, we put it to a non-thoroughbred stallion. So she's gone to, for want of a better word, a hack, who's not registered. And he said, well, you better put this thing back in foal. It's actually got a pretty good horse at home. So they've gone back now to he's remarkable for this season because, to be honest, the breeding career for the dam was all but over. And Sean, it's easy to say on wet tracks that form may not translate to a better track, but she's winning that pretty well. And those horses who can get up to 2,000 to 2,200 have an enormous array of options through the summer and through the winter.
They do, and they've got a fitness edge too. And particularly that filly, she gets her head down nice and low. I think she'll be right on top of the ground.
Yeah, he was thinking the same too, was Gary, and he's thinking a week off now, then maybe the Harbour Cup over 2,300 in a month's time. And he wasn't totally sure about the firm tracks, but he did say it was a chance. But of course, he has races like way back into autumn next year, like the Hawke's Bay Cup she could possibly turn up in. But for $5,000, he's found himself a real bargain.
And she is ultra consistent as well. Let's head across the Tasman. If the New Zealand racing wasn't enough, there was a fantastic day at Flemington. And we head there now, kicking things off with the Makybe Diva, the Group 1 on the card. And what an upset it was. Gatting causing an absolute boil-over and a win for Jamie Carr.
What did you think here? Because Gatting is the horse from WA who ran last at Belmont the start before. There's Mystic Journey, the hot favourite on the outside. I thought Mystic Journey was going to go straight past it.
I thought that too, but I read that they said Mystic Journey, month between runs, she'd just done too well, and they noticed she cantered down to the start a bit fresh, and so that they were pretty happy.
Shawnee, what do you do when you train Mystic Journey? And Adam Trinder's been fantastic with the media. You sit 3 back on the outside, it's a beautiful ride, and you can't pick up this horse. Do you think to yourself, let's just turn the page and keep feeding it and keep going, or do you have to do something different?
No, look, I think he's got a pretty spot on. I mean, we're all waiting for Gatting to stop. And he just simply didn't. You know, we didn't consider him. Even when he's in front halfway down, we're thinking, well, he's going to fade soon. And he simply kept kicking. So he's obviously a tough sort of horse to get past. But she'll improve for sure. It was a beautiful ride on Mystic Journey. And there's a couple other horses a little disappointing behind them as well.
She's a little star as Mystic Journey. The owners of Gatting, I think they were as surprised as everybody else on track at Flemington. Here's some vision we pulled off Twitter of them celebrating Gatting's win and cheering the horse home.
Go, Frankie! Come on! Go, Frankie! Come on, Gary! Come on, Frankie! Come on, Gary! Come on, Gary! Come on, Gary! Come on, Gary!
That's what racing's all about, isn't it? That celebration. And did we noticed a beer on the table there as well when we were having a little look earlier?
He's got a little table in his lounge set up, which is almost certainly for beers, and it's like 1 o'clock in the afternoon in Perth that he's having a can to celebrate. I'm sure he had plenty more. Really interesting what that does to the Cox Plate market, because Mystic Journey was so warm in the Cox Plate.
Yep.
What it does is it says to me, Tiaka, Shark, or any of the other horses, Homesman, who was really good the week before.
It's open, isn't it?
Exactly.
It's an open
Even
race.
Melody Bell.
Winnable
You're
race.
now thinking this isn't a scary Cox Plate to go to, which Sean, for the last 4 years, it's been awfully scary.
Yeah, we're coming out of the Winks era, aren't we? So, and all of a sudden, you know, the Hartnells and the horses running second to Winks, they aren't there either. The seconds and thirds. So, you know, it's a very open Cox Plate. I mean, you still want to be on Mystic Journey at this point, of course. That's why he's still the favourite. And but just one other thing I did want to mention was, did you see Gatting's trainer after the race? In stark contrast to the owner, he looked like someone had just given him an electric shock. He was, he seemed almost dumbfounded by the win.
Well, it's remarkable, the WA form, because without being horrible, we pay no attention to WA form here. I don't know anybody in New Zealand who actually watches Perth racing religiously. And we're about to see Arcadia Queen in Sydney. He was really good, and Scales of Justice has come across, who's been really good too. So the WA form's been very strong. And I never watch it. I mean, do you watch WA racing?
Not really, only if I'm working in the studio here.
No.
But you kind of have to take note, because there's a few that are really sort of putting their hands up and saying we're here.
Yeah, and Shawnee, it's obviously a very difficult thing to do. It's very microclimatic, WA. So to bring horses across to the eastern seaboard, plenty have failed. But at the moment, they might just have one of those great crops that have just been able to come across the Nullarbor.
Well, I got a mate of mine who always says, back Pike and drink what you like. So he's a big William Pike fan. But I think Bob Peters has made a big difference to Western Australian racing. He's made a massive investment, and he's travelling horses over, and he's got, you know, pretty good hold on the better ones in WA, and they're racing very successfully in Sydney and Melbourne.
Might just be a case of, as we said, heading out of that Winks era and opening up a few opportunities for horses from other areas of Australia and hopefully New Zealand as well. Speaking of New Zealand, let's have a look at Caliban, who was first up for the Tiakau team yesterday in a 2,500 metre race, and I thought asserted himself well.
It's going to be interesting to see how this form stacks up, because I'm not sure how good these horses are compared with the horses in the races they'll be aiming for, but Shawnee probably couldn't have done much more than this. He found the line all right in the Tiakau colours, 2 months away from his previous run at 2,500. You would think he would improve.
I think he went nice. Look, he's followed them around, he's relaxed good. It must be very hard for Jamie Richards to take a horse who's come from Europe, been trained in a totally different environment and system, and try and have him prepared for a 2,500 metre race first up. He's kept finding the line, and he's kept finding it well. And the big key will be his next start. He'll either go in an upward spiral, or he'll flatline and run a similar race again, and I'm tipping he'll go upward.
That'll be good. There's the slow-mo on the line there. It was a fantastic finish as well. And Caliban, often those horses that come over from Europe, they just take that one prep, and the next prep they're better. So one to watch there in Caliban. Glory Days, the little Kiwi mare, she did a lovely job as well in her run at Flemington, and she closed it off very, very nicely. And I liked what I saw. She's on an upward spiral.
I spoke to Bill Thurlow during the week, and he said, look, if we finish top 5, we're happy, which is what she does. He was going into the race, as we said, he had pulled to the outside here in the blue and pink colours. He was hoping he could retain Craig Williams, and this might keep Craig interested for another run. She's likely to go to a Friday night race at Benalla in 2 weeks' time. That's over 2,046 metres. Back up in distance, she probably improves a bit, but retaining Craig is going to be difficult, Sean, because there's that many internationals at the moment who would love to get either him or Ollie or somebody like that on. So it's a big fight for Bill to try and retain him.
Yeah, and he's probably thinking Melbourne Cup already, and so Craig Williams is probably too high a target. He'll almost certainly be on an international horse. So you want to get your jockey that you want to be going forward with to get you all the way through. But I thought that was a lovely run, and perhaps a shower of rain will bring her on a little bit more race day too.
She's a lovely mare. She doesn't look like much, but she tries her absolute heart out, does Glory Days. Of the 3-year-olds, Dalasan was very impressive in the Group 2 Danehill Stakes, and it featured former Kiwi in Your Deal. What did you make of this one?
Two things. First of all, Your Deal has the back of Dalasan here, so has a nice target to aim for. He just gets a little bit lost in the straight 6, which a lot of horses will do. Dalasan starts to float here, and Dubious, who's in front, looks like it's got it. And Dalasan sort of mucks around and has a good look around, but he actually fights pretty well in the last 100. He changed legs and he won like a good horse. Your Deal flatlined and then came again well up the line, so not willing to write him off yet. That was a decent enough debut, but yeah, Dalasan's a horse who now clearly they're going to have Group 1 aspirations with.
And of course, another Kiwi interest was in Spanish Whisper, and Spanish Whisper was formerly here in New Zealand and did a lovely job to get a victory on the program at Flemington.
Yeah, that's her second, Group 2, so she's Lope de Vega, and Lope de Vega's had a wonderful record in New Zealand with only 10 starters giving him 3 stakes winners. They're looking for a Group 1, still partially owned by Daniel Narkley, who bred the horse, so well done to you, Daniel, and to Erin. They've got a horse there, Sean, who, if you can pick up a Maya or one of those Group 1 races with her, well, she's worth a fortune.
Yeah, she's a lovely filly, isn't she, or mare now. He also had a winner at Ruakaki yesterday by his resident stallion Ego, Daniel, so he's had a nice day. I'm tipping he would have had a nice red wine last night. But she keeps performing well in Melbourne, and she's in the right place. And those sort of races, those mares races are well put together for a mare like her.
Yeah, so they're talking potentially trying to go to the Maya for Group 1, or they could potentially go even to one of the other mile-type races against the boys with the weight allowance. So, look, she's doing a super job, and it was a big gamble to send her across the end, but, you know, 2 Group 2 victories already. Daniel is a breeder, so if they bring her back here, they're going to have a really nice broodmare, and the sort of horses we need to be taken to Karaka, to keep those sales averages up.
Sure, right. So let's get to Rose Hill. We had a fantastic day at Flemington. Rose Hill produced the goods as well. The Theo Marks was one of the features on the card. You can see marked up there, Arcadia Queen, Volpe Veloce, the Kiwi. Arcadia Queen, she was very good, and she's a really exciting horse.
I spoke to James McDonald about her about 2 weeks ago, and he said she's a bull. He said she's a real bullet of a horse, and he had to kick her up a bit earlier here, so she got a bit keener behind the leaders, but look, she was just way too good. I'm not sure the Everest is her peak distance, so Chris Waller's going to try and keep her fresh for that over the 1200, but James indicated to me he thought his best chance of winning a big race on her was the Golden Eagle on November the 2nd, so that's 21.5 million worth of races for her in her next 2 starts. Volpe Veloce got too far back, actually made all right ground in a situation where she couldn't win a long way from home. Here's the market for the Everest, and look, Shawnee, I'm not sure I'll be betting into this too fervently at the moment, because a lot's going to come down to barrier draws, track conditions, and how these sprinters who are on such a tightrope hold their form.
That's right. Look, Arcadia Queen, isn't she strong? I haven't seen a mare with that much natural muscle in a long time. But these Everest sprints, as you say, it comes down to draws and barriers. And geez, they can. There's a bit of conjecture Jerry Harvey brought up about the interest in the Everest in Sydney at the moment, overtaking perhaps the interest in even the Melbourne Cup, which of course is full of internationals, and it's a contentious point, I'm sure. But
what's the bigger race for you?
Well, the Melbourne Cup's a traditionalist race.
Iconic, isn't it?
But I kind of get what he's saying. You know, like half the field in the Melbourne Cup, we don't even know who they are. And it's hard to do form, especially for guys like yourself, to go back and work out how they're going to measure up when they're going to get here, how they're going to travel, things like this. At least these sprinters are here, and the punters have a bit more faith in what they're betting on.
Let's have a little look, or not a little look, just a little chat about the run to the Rose. That was an impressive Godolphin horse that reversed the form.
It was a total form reversal, because they had the first lead up to San Domenico 2 weeks ago, and they had a horse go out $1.40, one go out $4. They reversed the odds yesterday, and it goes completely the other way around. So it just goes to show, with these good young horses, often they're on a knife edge, and some of them, with Godolphin's horses, I had a good talk to James Cummings about this at Ascot. They're trying to not screw them down too early in the season, so often they're improving after one run. And that's, look, we saw his 2-year-olds last year, all trialled poorly in the spring, 7th, 8th in the trials, and they were coming out and ran the trifecta in the Golden Slipper. So I do think that's a word of warning for punters. We saw Hartnell yesterday. James is being very soft on these horses early and preparing them for later in their campaigns. It was really interesting to find out how they're doing it.
And of course, that means that they're wound up for those big assignments coming up later on in the spring. We're going to get to a break, and then when we come back, we've got the news for the week. And following that, Bernard Saundry joins us on the show. In news this week, veteran trainer Bruce Marsh has called time on his 14-year training career in Singapore as he sends out his last team of runners at Kranji tonight. The expat Kiwi has enjoyed great success in Singapore, including Group 1 winners War Affair, Hello and Goodbye and Race Ahead. The former Melbourne Cup winning jockey is looking forward to helping son Stephen, whilst also getting involved in the bloodstock side of racing, sourcing horses for clients in Singapore. Probabeel will have a new jockey in Saturday's Tea Rose Stakes at Randwick. Kerem McAvoy will replace James McDonald on the Kiwi filly after McDonald decided to stay with the Chris Waller-trained Fun Star following her first up run. In further news, Avantage has also arrived in Sydney with a second up assignment in the Group 3 Bill Ritchie Stakes over 1,400 metres at Randwick on Saturday. The depth of the New Zealand breeding industry was on display again last week when former champion New Zealand sprinter Bounding kicked off her broodmare career with gusto. Her first foal by dual US Horse of the Year, Curlin, was the subject of a spirited bidding duel before being knocked down to Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum of Godolphin for $4.1 million at Keeneland's September yearling sale in Lexington, Kentucky. Bounding was a $1.9 million purchase herself by Barbara Bank of Stone Street Farm. And finally, Sir Michael Stout's star horse, Crystal Ocean, has been retired following a career-ending leg injury. The winner of 8 from 17 and more than £2 million in prize money was named world's best racehorse after landing his first Group 1 at Royal Ascot in June. He is probably best known in this part of the world for this titanic battle with superstar mare Enable.
She's just in front, Enable, racing up towards the line, and she'll win a second King George. What a race! That was a horse race. Crystal Ocean edged out second.
A horse race is exactly what it was. They went toe-for-toe up the straight, and Enable was just too good. Watch out for her in the arc. A special mention as well, Michael, must go to Russell Cameron, who passed away last week after a battle with Alzheimer's, and he trained here in New Zealand, and it's a really big loss.
Yeah, a really popular guy. I'm sure you would have known him better than I did, but Russell, one of those guys who always seemed really on for a chat and dry sense of humour, and just one of those guys in racing who everybody liked.
Terrific bloke. Well, we stayed with him at Flemington. Well, you stayed, Emily, as well, numerous times, and you could see his mental health starting to go wayward towards the end, and he was deteriorating, which was a great shame because he was a very sharp trainer and a good horseman.
All right, that's obviously thoughts with Russell Cameron's family. Bernard Saundry, we've been teasing it all week, and he is here in the studio. Bernard, welcome into the show. Great to have you here today.
Thanks for having me on, Emily, Michael and Sean. Great to be here.
Let's sort of jump straight in head first. Murray Baker came out a couple of weeks ago with some comments about the stakes in New Zealand, saying that it was going to be 2 years before we saw any increase, and perhaps in 2020 the stakes were going to go down. Let's just start by addressing that and what you made of those comments.
Well, first of all, there's no doubt we all want more stakes because prize money equals jobs. And over the last couple of years, we've been distributing prize money through the TAB, really with money we haven't earned. So we've got some surgery to do, I'd have to say, for the first 12 months. But clearly, the new revenue streams that the government have put in place, the race fields, point of consumption charge, and the gambling duty, will allow us to increase prize money. The exact timing of that will be dependent upon the performance of the TAB, the current performance, and we'll know more about that in the next 2 or 3 weeks. By the end of September, we will see the results for 18-19. We've been given a clear direction for 19-20 that stakes are to remain the same as was in 18-19 into 19-20, and the Reta board have put that in place. So that's a good thing. When those stake money increases will apply will depend upon the timing of the regulations and the balance sheet of the Reta board.
Okay, so stakes aren't going to go down
For this season, no.
for the season after?
No. Well, it will depend upon the performance of the TAB, and I don't see them going down. The challenge is for the current performance of the TAB to remain in place.
Okay.
So if we can hold what we've got today, the new revenue streams, which for thoroughbred racing circa $9 or $10 million, with 70% of that should be going into stakes. So I'm working very hard with the reader board to make sure that the performance of the TAB doesn't go backwards. And if it doesn't go backwards, those revenue streams can go back into the industry. And we've got prize money as number one priority, and our clubs who haven't had an increase in any funding for 7 years is the second priority.
We've had now a year since the Masara report came out. A lot of people in the industry, Bernard, are frustrated by the pace of change or the lack of change. Having been involved in administration in a place like Victoria where there was radical change, is this normal? Is it going too slow here? And what are the impediments to making it go faster?
Yeah, I'm hearing that a lot, Mike, and I absolutely understand that. But I think in racing you have to play the long game. And I know it's been frustrating for a lot of New Zealand participants over a number of years, but I've seen the Masara report be completed, out for consultation, report finalised, the MAC group appointed, the RETA board appointed, and we're now in what I call implementation of the Masara framework. And I'm hoping, what I'm seeing is as long as we can hold the current performance and we don't go any further backwards than where we are today, that we will see stake increases in 2021.
We have we had the Masara report, and we all went to that meeting in Claudelands that day. And I think Winston Peters, who, God bless him, he's probably the only one in government who gives us any real support or has any real care about racing. And he said in that meeting, and I quote his words, that the racing board was a dead duck, and that we needed to change. And we've got this RETA in transitional now. Can you just explain to us, just so everyone's clear here, as a trainer, and there's a lot of trainers who don't understand exactly what RETA's role is, how the racing board formulates through that, and how the NZTR work under that complex. So what's RETA's key job, and how do they have power over the racing board, or are they part of the racing board? Or?
Well, the RETA board replaced the New Zealand Racing Board, the directors on that board, and they've been empowered by the minister over the next 12 months to implement the Masara report, and that's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
So we've got 12 months to transition to the Masara framework, and anything else the RETA board think that's applicable for the racing industry. And I'm looking towards the end of 1920 to have the right levers in place, and I'm absolutely convinced the industry's got 3 levers. One lever is the new revenue streams we've just created in the last set of legislation, race fields, point of consumption, wagering duty. Second, and NZTR have been very strong on this, that's advocating for joint venturing the TAB with an international wagering operator, so we've got a balance sheet that can invest into retail, into on-course, and grow our customer base in New Zealand. And then the third bit is the venues, and I know we're going to talk about that today, but I believe that the industry has an opportunity, but NZTR can't do that on its own. It needs to work in partnership with clubs to deliver the financial outcomes in that space. So I see 3 key revenue pillars that NZTR have been advocating for and will continue to advocate for.
Mate, the racing board came out and said that at the start of the year, John Allen projected $170 million to go through. Then we had this roadshow that he went on and explained to us that it didn't take off, as we all know, with the betting platform, the new fixed odds betting platform, and we will now have $155 million. And we're now hearing that it's going to be significantly south of that. How are we going to sustain stakes with a product that's going down?
Well, we'll know more. That's a good question. And I'm not privy to the absolute details. But what we do know is the RETA board's got a pretty clear direction is, don't let stakes go down this year. This is in 1920, and don't leverage your balance sheet. So within those 2 bookends, for want of a better word, we've got a job ahead of us.
Do we need an injection of money from an outsourcing from the TAB, in your opinion?
I'm a big supporter of a JV. I've worked in a JV for 25 years, and the environments I've worked in, the Victorian racing industry has been better off for it. It creates a commercial tension that doesn't exist in New Zealand today.
One of the key issues for a lot of trainers, and I fully respect trainers and owners and their staff, are suffering financially. One of the key things people hate is the fact that we have a fixed odds betting platform, for want of a better word, which cost a lot more money than people thought. And that money may be between $40 and $50 million, depending on who you ask. Once you've got that, and we now have it as part of the system, just so you and I have discussed this before, but for those people watching at home, you can't just dismantle it, can you? You can't turn it off and say, well, let's forget about that. Now we've paid for the thing, it's got to stay. Is that your view on it?
Well, it's an asset that's had an investment from the New Zealand racing industry, and any international operator that could come along could have effectively used that platform, integrated with other jurisdictions. So, yeah, don't get me wrong, this is a big challenge ahead of us. We've got a big challenge ahead of us.
I need to ask you a question and try and answer it as non-politically as possible. Are there too many factions in New Zealand racing? The people at this table, the people watching at home, want the same thing. We all want exactly the same thing. More money, more share, more stakes. I have found in my dealings with this, there are teams building. One team wants one thing, one team wants another thing. They don't like each other and they're working against each other. Is that how you're finding the experience?
Certainly coming to New Zealand, it is very much personality driven rather than focused on running a business. So I do find that very different. We've got to achieve an outcome. We've got to improve prize money. We have to improve our tracks, and we have to improve the opportunity for people to go to the races, and that should be our sole focus. To me, nothing else matters. And yes, I think we do find that the personality gets in the way of making appropriate business decisions.
Isn't that a leadership issue? Isn't it any situation, because people run entire countries, isn't this an issue where the leadership, whether it's of NZRB or RETA as it may now be called, or NZTR, if these people are unable to speak to each other or come to these conclusions for the betterment of racing, they should stand down? Because I'm finding at my level, Bernard, there are all these teams who are unwilling to talk to each other, and that's what leadership is. It's bringing people together for a common cause. I don't believe that's happening. Do you think there's the right people leading NZTR, for example?
Yes, I do, and I think you'll find that one thing that I've noticed since arriving in New Zealand, the whole structure isn't conducive to making appropriate business decisions, because the wagering operator was, call it the old NZRB, was also involved in doing code-related activities. A wagering operator should be selling the next bet, should be developing the next customer base. Not be let the codes worry about their code businesses. Let the codes worry about delivering a racing program to the wagering operator, and let the codes worry about distributions to clubs and participants.
I need to ask you about...
And that's got to be very clear, because at the moment there's some grey area in that space at the moment.
I need to ask you about one of the elephants in the room. One of the recommendations of the Massara report was the vesting of Avondale for a figure which we'll put at $200 million for the betterment of the industry. And a lot of people out there watching the show want that to happen. Avondale have come out and said we're not interested in that happening. Has NZTR taken a legal opinion on whether they can actually vest the supposed $200 million out of Avondale for the betterment of the industry, or whether that's actually illegal?
It's very clear. It's a club's asset, and we are encouraging and have had a couple of meetings with the three clubs, and we've got another meeting with the three clubs this Friday to talk through what does the future of Auckland racing look like. And like the Waikato clubs have done, Waipa, Cambridge and the Waikato Racing Club, they've engaged together. We want the same to happen with the Auckland clubs, and we're asking the same to happen in the Taranaki region.
So just to clarify that, you don't see a vesting of this where basically this asset is sold for this figure of maybe $200 million and the money goes to the industry unless their board votes for that? Is that what your legal opinion said? Because at the moment, that was a key tenet of the Massara report. Forget outsourcing to the TAB. That's not going to make you $200 million. But that's what it said.
The clear recommendation in Massara was that the industry needed to do that. It needed legislation. NZTR or NZRB haven't got that legislation today.
Okay, so at this stage that can't happen.
That's
because
right.
There seems to be a thought process that can, and I don't think it can.
Correct.
Wouldn't it be wonderful if the Auckland Racing Club, counties, even Ruakaka perhaps and the Avondale Jockey Club, combined like the STC and the AJC did and made it an ATC? Now, that would be perfect for the industry. No, but look, Avondale's been an integral part of New Zealand racing for a long period of time, as is other clubs that we're looking to shut down. But the greater good is the whole industry.
You're a trainer. Are you comfortable with it closing?
Look, I think Avondale must be stayed there while we get Ellerslie right. We don't race at Ellerslie for 4 months of the year, and that's disappointing. We see this racing at Flemington and Caulfield and Moonee Valley. If we can inject some money to make sure that Ellerslie, whichever track you prefer to have race on, is sustainable 12 months of the year, we probably don't need Avondale.
That segues nicely into Cambridge and synthetic tracks. We believe that Cambridge is going to get a synthetic track put in there. What's the update on that?
So we're very close in finalising that arrangement with the government. We've got one little condition that we have to meet, and then the government will be able to make some announcements.
I take that would be a licence to race, because obviously it's changing from a training facility to a race facility, so
Correct.
that would need to be a resource consent?
Resource consent. So we've had terrific support from the trainers at Cambridge. We've had a project team on it for the last 10 months, and the Cambridge committee are contributing to the project. And but the final, what I'll call peg to make this happen, is with the support of the government, and they've been very open to the way they want this to occur, and Sir Winston Peters has made that very clear, the way he wants it to happen.
What about greenfields, which is a totally different thing? Obviously they're talking about a synthetic track at Cambridge, which we are hoping is going to happen. The greenfields project, where we see some tracks close and this new facility start, where is the progress or lack of for that at this stage?
Yeah, so the three clubs have come together, Cambridge, Waipa and the Waikato, have also appointed PwC to do a feasibility study, and that feasibility study will be finalised October or November this year. So yes, everyone wants everything to run quicker than what it is. The reality is we're talking about hundreds of years of history. We're talking about people have got ingrained positions. We want to make sure we know there's a better world for thoroughbred racing, and we want the clubs to drive some of this change with us. And so the two discussions that have started to occur, that haven't happened in my understanding for 20 years, we've got three clubs in the Waikato talking together, and we've got three clubs in the Auckland region wanting to talk to each other. So that's a positive. I hope in 12 months' time I could sit at the table with you, three of you, and say, look at what is possible for the next 10 years of racing in both those regions. And there's no doubt we need two world-class facilities, one in the Waikato, racing and training, that can house 2,000 horses, have a 2,400 metre grass track, a 2,000 metre synthetic track, and then in Auckland we need an international venue to be recognised, not only for New Zealanders but for Australians and people internationally to bet with confidence, and that's all possible. But it needs some common sense, some clear thinking, and some good people to come to the table to make that happen.
I just wonder if we've got as much time as we perhaps need. And we've got trainers out there, the older generation of trainers, and geez, they call me a young trainer and I'm nearly 50. That's because most of the trainers are older than me. And these guys, okay, they're racehorse trainers, but they're not really. They're property developers. They've had land from when they were young, they've managed to buy land, and that's where their profit is. You know, I charge, I don't mind saying, I charge $75 a day to have a horse trained, and my margin is nothing. I have to sell horses or win races to make money. And, you know, I'm certainly not at the bottom level.
So tell me, what do your cohorts, your fellow trainers, who I've got nothing but respect for, I wouldn't get out of bed that time in the morning, especially for that money. How do they feel? What do they want to happen next?
The two things I find most of all when I go to these meetings is, number one is the frustrations kicking in now. We have a board over the last 5 years, and I'm talking about the racing board, who have gone from 11 million of the expense of running racing to 24 million, and while the revenue coming in is going down. Now that leaves something around the 59 million mark for thoroughbred and stakes. That's offensive. 21 million to run the game and 59 million going to thoroughbred stakes, simply not enough. And accountability. Nobody knows. I mean, we have no general accountability about who is responsible or who is going to take this to the next level. Now, the reader board have just come in and we have to back those. We've sat through CEOs after CEOs telling us how they're going to grow the customer product and how they're going to do this and do that. And it just simply hasn't been working. And if something goes wrong in my stable, if I have a horse get beat, the stewards come in, they ask me questions and I'm accountable. If I have a track work rider who buggers up a gallop and does things wrong, as Stephen McKee found out very recently, you are held accountable. We have nobody accountable in this game for some very poor decisions over a long period of time. And the faith in the corporate product for us is very ordinary. And I'm not a corporate. I don't understand the corporate world. But I know when I'm running a business and I have horses and I'm getting my business becoming smaller because I'm losing horses, I certainly don't send my expenses up and employ more people. We just don't get it.
Is it a lack of communication? Are the trainers and the horse people in this country not being given enough information about what's happening? Because we're asking Bernard questions here, and we could ask John Allen from what's now Rita or the racing board. There seems to be a lack of actual information to trainers about where their future's going.
I think it's certainly slow coming through, and I understand there's a process of these things, but I don't think a lot of trainers, and I've been to a few trainers' AGMs recently, realise how close to the line we are financially. They really don't. We just look back and say, this is a big industry. It's $1 billion industry. We can't collapse. We can. We are not making money, and we are very, very close to the line. And that's not just small livelihoods, that's the whole racing game.
Many industry participants will have noticed an increased presence on track from Love Racing. Do you feel you're straying from the core business of racing administration?
Well, I think it's really important that someone promotes thoroughbred racing, and in the racing board model, the old racing board model, that was partly done, and in the new model going forward, where it has to be code-led, someone's got to take responsibility for developing out the profile of New Zealand thoroughbred racing. So, I'm very strong that someone's got to do it. The Love Racing brand has been out in the marketplace, was done 2 or 3 years ago. So when I come into the job, we didn't have to create another brand. It was sitting there, and we've got 64,000 people monthly coming to that site.
Let's talk about track closures and the future venues plan. This time last year, there were going to be 20 galloping tracks closed. A re-release of the future venues plan in January saw some of those not closing. We've gone from 10 potentially to 7, which will close this season. This is a difficult question to ask without sounding rude. Do NZTR have the power or the final say over which tracks will close, or has that now been ceded to Rita, who have been given this power to basically be in charge of New Zealand racing, full stop? Who gets to have the final say on what stays open and what closes?
NZTR.
So what say, for example, Stratford, which is closing, say, OK, we're closing down, you're not getting a licence. Then Rita say, well, actually, if you can show a good business plan, you can stay open. What say that happens?
Well, that's not my understanding of the way it's going. It has worked, it is going to work.
Because I think one of the problems, Bernard, is that as we see some of the tracks in the South Island that will close, is if I said to most people who's in charge of New Zealand racing, they wouldn't know. Now, technically it's the Minister, but we know he's Deputy Prime Minister and is too busy to look after New Zealand racing. Who do you think's in charge of New Zealand racing? Actually, I'll make it easier. Who's in charge of New Zealand thoroughbred racing?
Well, the NZTR board are, and is funded by the NZRB, now Rita, under an old structure that hasn't worked, because that's why we're sitting in the position we are today. And that's why Masara was appointed. And the Minister was right. The industry is terminal. And a club president the other day said to me, yes, we need major surgery. So I don't think there's any doubt what Sean's saying is right. We need to quickly implement the Masara review, and I do say play the long game. This thing can't be turned around in 12 or 18 months. There is a commitment from all parties over 4 or 5 years. Prize money is the #1 priority. And in fairness to the Rita board, they focused on the revenue generating opportunities to deliver improvements in prize money. So I understand there's a level of frustration from Sean and the trainers. I'm hearing that every day. But the Masara report will articulate and demonstrate the role of the codes versus the role of the wagering operator. And that's the world I've come out of. And the quicker we get to that, the better off we'll all be. That includes joint venturing, the TAB, and getting these 3 new revenue streams in place that can deliver improvements in prize money on the basis that we hold the current performance of the TAB. And that's going to be a challenge also.
We have barely scratched the surface of the chat with Bernard. Unfortunately, that's it for us on Weigh In, but we are going to keep Bernard in the studio, and he's very kindly going to sit down with us, and we're going to be able to ask him some more questions, and look out online for that a little bit later on. That is Weigh In this week. We'll join you next Sunday, 10 a.m.